In 1849, Dr. Bartlett Durham donated 4 acres of land for the planned North Carolina Railroad. This undeveloped ground in eastern Orange County became the site of the new railroad stop. The name would later be Durham's Station, in honor of the good doctor. Now, 20 years later, in 1869, the town was incorporated, the city we now know as Durham, North Carolina. And in the 152 years since, as the city has grown, it has evolved, and as its prospects have increased as well, it has made the city a destination for businesses, residents, and visitors, and it's a city that has both embraced and celebrated all of its history. The city is historically known, we know, for the contributions in medicine, as well as the success in preparing students for the real world after they get out of school. Obviously, Duke and North Carolina Central have played a large part in that. Durham has become an attractive option for a whole lot of people. And the Durham Sports Commission, it's an important part of both the past and the future. Founded in 2016, the DSC recognizes the opportunities that exist in the city. And one such opportunity is the ability to bring together thought leaders, those that we could have an engaging conversation. And this, during Black History Month, we felt like this would be a great opportunity to bring some folks together. And the topics that are swirling around in America these days, there's a lot going on. And we're thrilled to have with us 4 people with a wealth of experience, 3 from right here in Durham, and 1 out in Kansas City. Our time together will provide some opportunities for our audience to listen, to learn, to celebrate again, and maybe we'll encourage a dialogue that you can have with your friends and your family and your colleagues and maybe beyond your circles. So with that, why don't we introduce our panelists today? And with that, we will ask Ingrid, Wicker, Mccree to get us started with the intros.
Well, thank you so much, Trip, for hosting us today for the Durham Sports Commission. My name is Ingrid Wicker Mccree. I've been in college athletics for 29 years, 27 of which at North Carolina Central University, where I began as a head volleyball and softball coach. I have served as the athletics director for 13 years, and I was an inaugural board member of the Durham Sports Commission. So thank you for having me today, and I look forward to our conversations.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nina King. I am Senior Deputy Director of Athletics for Administration and Legal Affairs and the Chief of Staff at Duke University and within Duke Athletics. And Trip, thank you so much. Honored to be here and really grateful to Marcus Manning and the Durham Sports Commission for the invitation. It's really exciting to be able to have this meaningful conversation with such great colleagues and friends.
Hello, I'm Stan Johnson. I am the Executive Director of the Minority Opportunities Athletic Association, and I'm the one out in Kansas City. I, too, want to thank you all for allowing me to be with you today. I'm also President and founder of Stan Johnson & Associates, a consulting firm that works with the diversity and inclusion area. I'm one of the founding members of MOA, and we look forward to having a real good discussion about the topics that Trip talked about.
How's it going, Trip? Thank you for having me. Also, thanks to the Durham Sports Commission. Excited to embrace in this conversation. My name is Troy Alston. I returned to my alma mater, Duke University, as the Senior Associate Director of Athletics back in 2018. Before that, I was a Director of Athletics at Longwood University. Also spent some time working with the NFL Coaches Association. So looking forward to engaging in this great conversation. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you all. And this is going to be an all gas, no brakes kind of session. We're going to try to cover as much as we can in a very short amount of time. I don't think it's going to sound disjointed, but it could. So let's just see where it goes. And as a serendipitous twist, my name is Trip Durham, and I'll be the one facilitating our conversation. So Stan, I want to get started. One of the big topics that's out there and has been for a while is the term social justice. Stan, how do you define the term social justice?
Trip, that is very interesting. That's a word that the two words that have been used a lot in this past year. We've heard a lot about social justice. I think it's probably just as much as the words that have been used. The four words that have been used the most is "turn your mic on" over this past year. So I think social justice is one of those things that you really have to look at it from your own lens and what it means and what you bring to the table. But if I were to put a definition on it, it would be the breaking down of barriers for individuals to enhance their upward social mobility and for all in our society. It is really kind of a relationship between individuals that allows people to receive the basic benefits of our society, and all of us should receive it, and it should be afforded to all of us. Things like equal employment opportunities, education, a fair, just legal system and a political system, such as universal rights for voting, equal economics, and fair distribution of wealth. So social justice can mean a lot of things to a lot of people, but it really comes down to ensuring that all people are not being held back by the things that are out of their control, like systemic racism or discrimination. It's an opportunity for people to be successful.
Ingrid, a pioneer in social justice and the idea of civil rights and unity and equality was Dr. John McClendon. He is someone that landed in Durham, North Carolina, and had an amazing influence on North Carolina Central as well as the community. You mentioned in your introduction that you're a native of Durham. What has the legacy, what is the teachings of Dr. McClendon meant to you? Where have you seen that impact really hit the city of Durham?
So, I'm very, very fortunate to work at North Carolina Central University, where legends such as Coach Mack help bring the attention and notoriety not just to NCCU, but the city of Durham, and specifically our athletics program. I remember during my early years as an AD, we celebrated our legends, and Mrs. McClendon we were so blessed that she could attend the event. And just listening to her talk about his life as a husband and a father, coach, was even more inspiring to me. And so each day, I can walk through the halls of McDougal McClendon Arena and feel his presence. And so that is just so impactful on my life, the student athletes, our coaches. And so he was definitely a true role model in his brilliance before his time. And so that's really what's special to me about Coach Mack. But also, Trip, I want to acknowledge the other heroes in Durham as well. You have Coach Russell Blunt. He brought together so many kids in this community, regardless of where you lived, what high school you went to. And so I think about Coach Blunt and his legacy. I think about Dr. Leroy T. Walker and his legacy and his impact on really me getting into this career field as an athletics administrator. So Durham is just so rich, and there's so many more. But definitely, I think the impression and the influence of Coach Mack started it all, and we're truly blessed that we can be a part of that.
And if for those watching and those listening, if you've not read the book entitled The Secret Game by Scott Ellsworth, it's an amazing look into not only the history of Coach Mack, but also how Duke University and North Carolina Central came together to play a ball game that was not really sanctioned by a whole lot of people, but really did a world of good in terms of bringing folks together. And Nina, I think that's a really good transition as we think about all of the conversations of social justice that have been occurring throughout the country. It doesn't matter the campus. Nina, given your experience at Duke, what have you seen as being the impact, the assets of having conversations about social justice on a college campus such as Duke?
Sure. I mean, it's, in a word, been a really positive impact. But, recently, I would say this late spring and last summer throughout the fall, more and more student athletes across the country really have made efforts to make their voices heard, to advocate for their beliefs. We've seen it relative to a variety of issues, but it's been especially true regarding social justice issues. I mean, we've had numerous peaceful protests, unity walks. Student athletes are using their voices on social media. They're really leaders trying to make sure that this historic period is recognized and recognized as a movement rather than a moment. And so for us as coaches and administrators, we really have a responsibility to educate our student athletes on the power that they have, make sure they understand, what they're saying and why, and how they can use their voices to effectively enact meaningful change. I mean, as the adult leaders, we really need to be supporting them in their efforts to be change makers and good global citizens. So as a result of the conversations, we've seen so many student athletes step up. We've seen coaches and administrators step up. Here at Duke, we've really seen our student athletes become more visibly engaged, vocal. I'm just so proud of our student athletes and really our entire athletics community for having the conversations and creating actionable steps towards change.
Troy, you were a student athlete at Duke, and I wonder, and I realize this may sound like a really broad question, it may not have a real easy answer, but given all the stops that you've had in your career, Troy, as you sit here today and look at the condition of the student athlete, whether it's through where they are through the pandemic, how it may relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion, Troy, how do you describe the current condition of the student athlete?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Nina touched on it slightly, and where their mindset is now, where they are empowered. And I think what we saw this past summer was kind of a buildup of frustration because in some way it was kind of the realization that we haven't moved as far as we should have, given all the work that's been put in ahead of us. So some of the empowerment for student athletes is kind of to us grown-ups to say, hey, we need to be more active. We need to be more forceful and pushing for change and uniting for change. So definitely, I'd say it's a mindset where they're weary, they're frustrated, but also empowered and in some ways a little ornery. You know, we saw were student athletes who were willing to challenge us and call administrators and adults in a lot of ways to the table to say, you know, we need new policy, we need some better education, we need to make sure this is an important topic. So it's really an exciting time to be in a position to as Nina talked about, help support them and help guide them along the way, and help be part of the initiative to make it better, not just for them, but for future generations.
Troy, given your answer, if you don't mind, a follow-up question. You talk about being adults, being the big kids in the room. Yeah. How do you know as a leader when the student athletes are having challenges? How do you know as a leader to step in? How do you know when it's time to embrace and bring people together?
Yeah, I really think one of the major components of being a leader is being an active listener. So hopefully you spend a lot of time getting to know the nuances of your student athletes and how they behave, and having check-ins with them, so you know, especially when something significant happens in the news or something significant happens on campus. I mean, regular check-ins and really just listening and watching, watching body language. It's an intentional effort to reach out to them and kind of pull information for them rather than sitting for them waiting to come talk to you. Because I think at a certain point that kind of bubbles up and then it's too late to really be supportive. At that point, you're reacting.
I mentioned at the top that this is going to be all gas, no brakes, so I'm going to hit the clutch and shift gears just for a minute. Ingrid, when you think about being a person of color in your career, have there been positive or negative impacts or moments because of being a person of color?
So, I'll start with some of the challenges. There are only about 28 Black female athletic directors out of 1,100 plus NCAA institutions, and I think even in Division I there's only 9. And so the challenge has been, how do we navigate and advance to this seat, being a Black woman, a woman of color. Oftentimes, especially for HBCUs, we're not the go-tos in terms of being able to be a candidate for some of the other jobs that are out there. And so that is a challenge in terms of the type of school that you're at. Specifically, again, for HBCUs, sometimes we're seen as an afterthought, and that sounds terrible, but, it is the reality. And so definitely, if they're not coming and looking at all areas for the talent, then certainly we get dismissed. One of the bonuses, though, of being very few, then you're identified sooner and earlier. So, whether that's you stand out, whether that's good or bad. But we definitely, don't want to rest there. But for me, the most positive aspect of being a woman of color, a Black woman in this role, is that I know that I am a role model. I know that people are looking at me to see what I do and how I do it. And so for me, that is the joy of being a person of color in this field.
Stan, as a dovetail to that, you geographically are just about in the center of the country. And we know that a lot of industries are still slow, almost to Ingrid's point, on the uptick of hiring more minorities. Different industries, they have their own philosophies. And certainly, as you're looking north, south, east, and west, you can look at the Northeast and the Southeast and realize, well, the Civil War, we've been talking about some of this since then. Why, Stan, has it taken so long to think about elevating people into positions of leadership? Why is it taking so long to give a fair shake?
Well, that's a question that I've been working on for about 30 years in athletics, beginning in my days when I started with the NCAA and to now being with MOA. I think it really starts with a commitment from leadership from the top. Individuals in the hiring positions have to ensure that the opportunities are being afforded to all individuals. And I don't know if that's totally being done. I hear individuals tell me that, well, I can't find the right talent. I can't find the person. And I say to myself, well, you can go out and find student athletes all over the country, anywhere you want to go. You can recruit them from any place. What you have to do actually is some what we call intentional recruitment. You have to actually look, and you have to do exactly what you do for student athletes. A lot of this comes down to relationships and trust. People in the hiring position, they usually trust people, or they know people, or they get referrals from people that they trust. And if we're not afforded the opportunity to be in those circles, those inner circles, if, as Ingrid said, I'm only looked at certain times. I'm not looked at certain times. If I'm not afforded to be in that circle, then I don't get the look. If you don't know me, then how can you trust me? And even though I'm qualified to do the job, I look at the individuals that are on this panel, they're qualified to do most of the jobs in this country. And so, they're there. There are people out there. Now, whether they choose or they want to move or leave Raleigh, Durham, I don't know if they want to leave Raleigh, Durham or not, but they're qualified to do the job. I think it all starts with building a relationship, having trust, and that athletics directors, and let me say this about the hiring the senior position. Athletics directors don't hire athletics directors. College presidents hire athletics directors. And they're the ones that have to really say that we're going to make this commitment to hiring somebody and be intentional about it.
Stan, it's a devil's advocate question, and I realize I'm setting a ball on a tee here. But you said
Yeah.
you've been trying to figure it out for 30 years. Has there been good movement in the last 3 decades?
Well, I can say this, that when I started, there were three people of color in the athletics chair. And there's more than that today. And we have a number of individuals. While we've made some progress, we still got a long way to go. It's only about 12% of all athletics that we have people of color sitting in the chair. And when I say people of color, it's not just black. There's Hispanic, Asian, and those individuals are sitting in the chair to be successful. And they are successful. Some of them are leading some of the best programs in the country. And, you know, we need to do more. We need to do more. And I think with the social injustice, as you talked about, the injustice that's going on, because the social justice is another part of it. But I think it's been heightened, and awareness has been heightened. We've gotten more calls. We've gotten more looks. We've gotten more people to say, where can I find? How can I get someone? So I think the tide is turning, and our society is turning. This is what this election was all about, whether we're going to have a more diverse society or not. And that's important. And I think we are. And I think we'll move into that direction.
Well, I want to take a pause because we have been going so hard over the last couple of minutes. Is there something that one of your colleagues has mentioned? Is there a place where we'd like to follow up right now before we move into a different conversation?
Well, I was going to piggyback off of Troy earlier about our student athletes, and I will say that it has definitely helped me to grow and understand their voice, their concerns. And I'll give you an example of me that's just not thinking about the diversity within our student athlete population. The weekend of the George Floyd incident or death, I was sitting on my porch and I was crying. You know, I have a son, and I emailed all of our male student athletes just to let them know I'm here, I'm thinking about them, I love them, because I can only imagine as young men, young black men, what they were feeling. Well, little did I know that I actually offended my women student athletes, particularly my black female women student athletes. And because of my, thinking, okay, I'm a black female, surely they know that I am concerned about them at all times, because we have I have a Director of Athletics Women's Network program. We raise money for women's athletics, but that just did not occur to me that I might offend our women athletes. And they took to Twitter, they reached out to me, and I apologized. As a leader, you have to own up to your mistakes and your responsibility. And so I wrote a letter to my women student athletes. So again, this has just brought so much more awareness of everybody, there's movements for everyone, and they all have to be respected. And so as an athletic director, as a leader, you have to at all times be aware of all of your surroundings and the people that you are affecting.
Anyone else, any thoughts before we transition? Hearing none then. Troy, I'm going to toss it back to you. When you look at your resume, you've been in positions of leadership throughout your career. Granted, you started sort of at the bottom like we all do, but then elevating to a position of Director of Athletics at Longwood, you consciously decided to leave that top chair for a chair that's not the top chair. When you think about career path as a minority, why the switch from being the number one guy to not being the number one guy?
Yeah, I think my story highlights a little bit, or highlights the fact that everybody's situation is different. So won't jump into much, but I did get married at the time and had some lifestyle changes in which I felt like this would, Durham would be a great opportunity for me. Durham's a great city to raise a family, but also, and our AD, Dr. White talks about this often. I started to think about where I wanted to be next. So taking the opportunity at Duke was a strategic move for my resume and for my learning experience, and knowing that I wanted to be at this level, the Autonomy 5 level of college athletics, and get that exposure to football and some other sports that we frankly didn't have at Longwood. I also think people should be mindful about rather than titles, what experiences they're getting. That points to coming to an institution with football and the finances, the level of play we're at, but also maintaining the exposures and what drives you in a professional opportunity. I'm very thankful that I still have the opportunity to be involved in high level executive decisions. So this was a great match for me, and I really felt like it was a great next step versus a step back. I think sometimes individuals can become too fixated on titles, but when you really start to look at the industry and how the different silos work within the industry, sometimes a move makes more sense than what it may appear on the surface.
I am checking all of those boxes that you just mentioned, so I'm on the same page with you top to bottom. Nina, you've seen a great amount of change since you've been at Duke, and within that change, there has been a level of leadership, a level of mentorship that's come along in your career. You've had an amazing mentor in Kevin White, and I wonder that as a person of color, how it is that you view mentorship. And Nina, I don't know if it's the right question or not. Is there pressure? Is there difficulty? Is there reward of a different kind in mentorship being a person of color?
Sure. Well, let me just talk about mentorship in general first, and then get to specifically your question on being a person of color and the mentor relationship. So I think a mentor-mentee relationship can really make a powerful difference in another person's life. And having Kevin White as a mentor has done that for me. It's extremely important, if not critical, to help us succeed, and not just professionally, but also personally, because you can also learn so many life lessons from a good mentor. Mentors who can help you chart your path towards greatness in so many different aspects. And for me personally, who better than Kevin White, the godfather in college athletics, if you will. I've identified some good characteristics of a mentor that I now try to emulate when I serve as a mentor for young people in our business. Mentors bring people along. They help you grow your own network by opening the door to their network, facilitating connections to other professionals who can help shape success. But something that I've learned, and I tell young people often, remember, mentors champion you, they don't work for you. And so keep that in mind. I mean, they're not there to get you your next job. They're there to help you identify and provide some resources for you to go forward and try to obtain, the right next move in your career path. Now, I did read an article not too long ago that said women and ethnic minority professionals place more value on mentoring because they tend to face more obstacles in progressing in their careers. And for me, that clicked. It made sense. As a woman and a woman of color, there are some obstacles. So I feel now, in the position that I'm in, having been in college athletics almost 20 years, a responsibility to serve as a mentor to people who look like me, and to pay it forward, because I understand what it is to be a Black woman in this space. Some of the critical questions to ask, maybe a bit about how to navigate that professional ladder and climb over the obstacles, or how to go around the obstacles. And so I really feel a responsibility to pay it forward, and hopefully women can see in me that you can be a successful Black woman in this industry with a seat at the table, and also a wife and mom if that's what they desire. Although I will tell you all, I don't know how successful I am at the mom thing today. If you would ask my kids, because I dropped them off at school kicking and screaming, they thought they should have a snow day with the extremely light dusting of snow that we had in Durham this morning. So I wasn't winning the mom game today. But yeah, I mean, to sum it up, mentorship is critical. And for those of us that have kind of paid our dues and risen up the ladder, I think that we owe a responsibility to mentor the people that look like us and help pave the way for them as well.
I'm going to shift the question real quick to the gentlemen, and ladies, don't worry, I'll have a question for you coming up. Troy and Stan, when you think about your career progressions, when you think about the progressions of others, and career is a journey. Your first job certainly is not going to be your last job. So guys, when you think about character in that journey, what is your perspective on maintaining the character, the high road? Where have you seen people maybe fall on character? I think what I'm asking is, what are some best practices that you see from your chair that might help somebody who's watching or listening today?
Well, Trip, one of the things you said is who might be watching, and that's what people do. They look and they're trying to see who you are, and character really defines who you are to me. It is your ability to project and to be able to have people look at you and tell that this is a person who I want to emulate. Nina talked about a mentor. That's who you want to emulate, those people with good character, the people that have the abilities to show you the things that are important, and mentors can do that. But also, I just want to go back to this with mentors. One of the things people have to understand about that mentoring and character, like you're talking about, is that not everybody is a mentor. And one of the things that is important, we like to do that. We like to say, I'm going to pick up and just, this is going to be my mentor. Well, not everybody can be your mentor. And one of the things I think you need to understand is, do they emulate or do they have the characteristics that you are looking for? And if they have those characteristics, then you can do that. But a writer needs an editor, a publisher, an illustrator. They need different people in their lives. And each one of those people have different characteristics, and character is a part of that. So it means that you have a bunch of principles that you live by. And those principles are things that you don't allow people to move you away from. You have to be able to live by certain principles. And honestly, treating people with kindness, being fair, it does not mean you're going to treat everybody the same, because you can't. We're all different. We all have different needs. But can I, over a period of time, evaluate each individual in each situation and look at that independently and act accordingly? Do they have the character that I want? And so in my life, I've had to live by certain principles. And if those principles are things that were not something that was good, I'll give you an example. I worked for the NCAA for 11 years. And one of the principles that I live by, I have a mission statement that says, through God, prepare for the health, welfare of my family, grow professionally, and participate in the community. And the NCAA was getting ready to move to Indianapolis, and I had to make a determination of whether I wanted to go or not. Did I want to disrupt my family? Did I want to do those things that I needed to do? And I didn't. I didn't go. It was a principle that I'm grounded in this community, and it's things that I do in this community. And so I had 2 kids in high school too, and so part of my principle was to help them grow. And I'm not going to deviate from that characteristic. So I think that's what you have to do, and you have to be grounded in that process.
Troy?
Yeah, I agree with Stan wholeheartedly. I would also highlight for people as they think about character and why it's important. Oftentimes you hear people say it's what you're doing when nobody's watching, or what you're doing when you think nobody's watching. And a lot of time that's when character reveals itself. That's when, there's a lot of talk now about self-brand and how you brand, you want to improve your brand. I mean, at the end of the day, you improve your brand by doing well at the task that lays ahead of you. And oftentimes I think that gets lost in, all the efforts in networking and finding mentors. Sometimes it gets lost in doing your job well to the best of your ability and realizing that has a magnifying factor. I mean, that attracts people, especially in an industry such as ours that's so small. I I just think back to the times where somebody was called upon to give reference of me that I didn't know was being called upon, and I guess I'm fortunate in those moments that that well, I don't look. You want to be proud of who you are and what you do, and be confident in who you are. So I'm not saying this for a pat on my back, but I think I can take pride in the fact that people believe I'm a good person. So I don't ever have to worry about, or I don't worry about a great deal what people are going to say about me in terms of my character. I know it's something when I am in charge of a search. That's one of the number one things I'm at least trying to identify. Being an athletic director, sometimes you miss on connecting a coach or staff member who may be, in terms of competencies or fit and impact for a job. But I always felt like, I'm not going to mess with character. At the end of the day, people are going to say, well, he's a good person, and it didn't work out. Because again, I think that may help you for the next opportunity. So really, to Stan's point, you got to be mindful of what your principles are, staying true to that, and treating other people well, and working hard. So I think those are key components of character.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with patting yourself on the back every once in a while because you need to reinforce to yourself that, you know what, I'm probably doing okay. Nina and Ingrid, I'm going to ask the question then because we are shooting this live. I'm going to walk over to my window and see if I can adjust the strobe light effect that the people watching can see because it's becoming distracting to me as well. Ingrid, I'll ask you first, and Nina, you can fold in. In college athletics, as well as some other industries, there is a stone that is thrown at times if you've been at one place too long. People throw a brick bat saying, how come you haven't gone somewhere else to get more experience? You've both been at your institutions for quite a while. Is there pressure? Are there thoughts? How is it you decide that staying here is a good thing?
Well, Trip, I think it's very unique to each person. Troy talked about, why he decided to come to Duke and get out of the 80s chair. So I think there are quite a few, however, athletic directors and senior level administrators, as you mentioned, just like some head coaches who have had illustrious careers at one or two schools. And so I think you have to know what you want to do, who you want to serve, where you want to be. It was a no-brainer when Coach Sandra Schuler hired me to take over her phenomenal volleyball program and come to NCCU. It was just a no-brainer. My parents were graduates of NCCU. Yes, I'm a native. But to be able to be at home and in this community that gave me so much is, it was just a blessing, and it's great to be here. I think when I left North Carolina State as a grad assistant, and I loved my experience there, and I went to the school down the road, I'm not supposed to say it, but A&T. Was my first head coaching job. I was the youngest Division I volleyball coach. I just said, this is what I want to do. This is who I want to serve. This is what I'm supposed to do. And so when I had the opportunity, to come to NCCU, it was just never a thought. Now, I will say along the way, yes, to make sure that my lens stayed broad, right, it was very important that I served on NCAA committees and served on, engaged myself in external activities with communities and boards and things like that along the way, professional development. So that, right, although I'm here in Durham and I'm NCCU, but my perspective is much broad and my experiences are too, and my network. So I think it's just fine if you're able and blessed to find a place where you want to be, you enjoy being, and you are serving your student athletes. I don't see anything that's wrong with that. But I'm old school, so I'm a different generation.
Well, then maybe I'm old school too, because I think the same thing. But I do want to say, Tripp, you mentioned that sometimes people throw the stone and bricks get thrown back. Let's stop throwing stones and not judging folks for their career choices, because I wholeheartedly agree with Ingrid. There is no right or wrong answer about staying in one place. It's a personal, individual decision. I do think it's a giant myth that you have to move around in order to move up. And for me personally, I mean, I have been fortunate to be able to take advantages to grow professionally during my time at Duke. That's not to say that I was against moving, but for the past 13 years, I've been so committed and so passionate about the work that we're doing here at Duke with an incredible community that I haven't had the desire to pick up and move on. I do think it's bad to stay in one place if you become complacent. You need to be continually working on growing your skill set, actively seeking out challenges, collaborating with colleagues in various and different new ways. Like Ingrid said, get involved externally. I too am currently serving on an NCAA committee and working in the community. So if you find yourself growing too comfortable in a non-productive way, or God forbid you're losing your passion, then move on. And so for me, that just hasn't been the case for the past 13 years.
And Tripp, I just want to add to that. So you have two women right here who are serving on pretty much the highest committees in the NCAA, right? Women's basketball and the Division I Council. So we have not shorted our experiences whatsoever and gained so much for our student athletes on our campuses by our external, work and relationships.
That's a great way to follow up the point. So we're winding down our time, and I've tried really hard not to ask all of you the same question, because I really wanted to get through as many topics as possible. But we're at a place to where I feel like I want, and I think the audience may want to know, what each of you feel is the role that sports plays in our community, whether our community is Durham, North Carolina, or if our community is national. So why don't we go with the same order as intros? Ingrid, your thoughts about the role that sports plays in our society?
Well, and I may sound cliche, but sports plays such a critical role in bringing people together. I think about all of the challenges that we've had since COVID-19. And what's the one thing, even though there was a pause and a break for a minute, there is still sports. And that was just a breath of fresh air, something that even brought your families together while you're stuck in the house. But it's a vehicle for people to realize their dreams. Sports promotes a healthy lifestyle, and by Lord, we all need a healthy lifestyle more than ever. And then here in Durham, I know that Marcus and the Durham Sports Commission is determined to use sports tourism to not only generate additional dollars for our economy, but to really continue bridging our community together. And so that's really, for me, what sports means to our society.
Nina?
Once again, wholeheartedly agree with Ingrid. Sports just have such a unique way of making a positive impact on society. As Ingrid mentioned, they unify us, I would say, except for those couple of hours when intense rivalries play each other, that school down the road, and fill in the blank which school that is. But international sporting events, they have us rooting for our country, displaying national pride, World Cup, Olympics. Those are really exciting moments for us as a nation. I think sports definitely help teach our children resiliency, healthy habits, the beauty of good competition, and sports creates role models for our children. I am so fortunate that my children are growing up in this environment where they have Duke student athletes to look up to and to learn from. And the community engagement piece, athletes and coaches using their platforms to raise money for causes, to speak out in support of causes, and do community service and civic engagement work. And then obviously the economic impact. There's jobs in sports, the tourism that Ingrid alluded to. So there's just so many benefits to sport, and it's exciting. We've got a great hometown vibe relative to sports in Durham, and it's just so much fun to be a part of of this community.
Dan, you're in the bread basket, and there's a lot of sport out that way.
A lot of sports out this way. You know, the first question you asked me was about social justice. And I think sports has always been at the forefront of social change. When you look at the evening news, you will see five segments. You'll see something local, you'll see something about national news, you'll see something about the weather, you'll see something about business, and you see sports. We are visible. People see us, they watch us. It brings us together, as Ingrid and Nina said. It builds long-lasting relationships. It does a lot of things. But what more so than anything else in this country, it's a rallying point for people. And we're so visible in athletics that if I ask you the question, and I ask this question often when I'm doing this educational work around diversity and inclusion, what is your school emblem? And I will hear it's the Blue Devil or it's the Jayhawk or whatever it is. Well, no, that's not your school emblem. Your school emblem is that crest that they walk down in front of. That's the school emblem. That's the mascot of the athletics department. And people associate that more than they associate with the school's emblem. I'm a Blue Devil. I'm a Tiger. I'm a this. I'm a that. And we have to understand that we can, and that's why our student athletes are getting involved. That's why athletics is a mechanism by which we can make change. And I think that's the importance of it.
Troy, you're in the unenviable position. You could easily say ditto if you wanted to, and I'd be okay with that. But wrap us up.
Yeah, ditto would be the first part of my answer. Second part would be, I think everybody's touched on this in a way, but and I just think from my personal stance, sports can be a tool for education and life skills. And I think Nita said resiliency, commitment, discipline, and seeing how that pays off in real time. The reason I wanted to be an athletic director, the reason why I wanted to stay in sport is because, it's a passion for me. So I think that should be pointed out as well. I mean, there are other sectors of life, whether it be music or research, where somebody can find some of the same things, but you're forced into this mixing bowl as well. So in terms of life skills, you got to live with some other people along the way and learn how to deal with some other people, and that's important. And all those were true for me. I'm a black male. I was from a city landscape in northern New Jersey, and I came to campus at Duke, which was which is mostly white, and for people with higher socioeconomic backgrounds, and I know for me, I feel like sport helped me grow, not just on the field as well as off, as I was exposed to that, and I think part of that opportunity was because I was committed to sport, and I dedicated myself to becoming better at sport. So now I feel like in my professional life, I understand that everything's not for everybody, but when you find something you're passionate about, you take your time, dedicate to it, work hard on it, be true to it, and you can have some good things come your way. That's why I love sport, and that's why I think it's a great element for our society.
Ingrid, Nina, Stan, Troy, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate the insights and the education that you guys brought.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trip.
Folks, again, my name is Trip Durham. I invite you to visit all of our panelists, do that on their own school websites and directories, and make sure, too, that you find Stan at sjohnsonassociates.com. That'll be the right place to find him. And also DurhamNCSports.com, the Durham Sports Commission. They have powered our conversation today. And we do ask that you share this conversation, either the video or the podcast. Share it around with your colleagues. I think they would appreciate the offer from you to maybe give them some insights on what we've learned today. So until next time, thank you.